Giving a good critique is not easy, and that's what I'm focusing on here. I'm not giving many comments myself on the interpretation because I'm commenting mainly on the critique, because this is a place where I hope we learn how we will work. In university, at least where I was, for every hour in class, it seemed like we had 5 or 10 hours of work among ourselves. My purpose here is sort of to make sure that when you work among yourselves, it's productive. That's my theory about that. I recommend being a little bit more selective and a little bit more precise. You Mina, gave a good overall evaluation, and it's sort of like a general evaluation, and of course it was oriented towards interpretation. I think it could be more oriented towards interpretation by picking out a couple, 3 or 4 points where you, especially if you work with someone a lot and you notice they keep having the same problem, but of course that's not the case here, but sometimes you might notice in the same interpretation that there's a little bit of a tendency to do something. So this is not specifically for you, Mina, it's for everyone. As you listen, try to listen as an interpreter, as someone who might have had to do it herself, and think, okay, that part was hard and she dealt with it this way, and I think this is what I can say about it to help her. So be analyzing a little bit along those lines and try to pick out, in my opinion, maybe 3 or 4 points. And on those 3 or 4 points, I recommend writing verbatim so that there's no doubt. You can record each other, but that always takes so much time if you say, okay, let's go back and listen to it. So if you can just write 3 or 4 words, you said this, and I think that was a little bit off because I would have said that. So try to be, rather than have such a complete critique, something that's more selective and where you can dig down a little and give some, first of all, you need to be able to tell the person who just did an interpretation exactly where it is, which you pretty much did. So then when they find it, you can start thinking about, okay, was it a problem in the notes? Was it a problem in the listening? And try to dig down a little bit like that together. Go, okay, so there was a point that I'd like to cite as an example. There's a place where she says, I don't want to believe that you really understand the problem and still are doing nothing, because you would be evil. I want to believe that you just don't understand how bad it is. My summary, of course, I've heard it many times. I hope it's accurate, but I think she's saying something like that. And it's not that easy when she says it. But you did it. You did it. And I think, Mina, what did you think about that, Mina? Remember that part? You made a comment about that.
I was kind of missing the gravity of the message.
Mm-hmm.
I just listened to the part thinking that she got the message across, but well, she got the message in meaning, but I didn't get it in the emotional sense.
Yeah.
So I just got this. I think you should be doing better, which is not enough of a critique as Greta gives it.
Yeah, that's was a little bit true of many of us. And Miriam, yeah, I think you could. That's a good critique. It's very important that we are being faithful in terms of the actual emphasis and the emotion without overdoing it. If you overdo it, you can laugh. Yes, Mina, you want to say something?
Yeah, that's the one thing I thought of is I can hear that you're smiling while you're talking, which is usually pleasant, but in this context, it can interrupt with the message in a way. Like I can hear that you're smiling while you're talking, which can be very pleasant, but in this context with Greta's speech, it doesn't completely match the content. Does that make sense?
Does that make sense, Miriam? That
Absolutely.
is again, that hits on this fact that I want us to act as if we were there. And you're smiling a little bit because you're here with a bunch of people on Zoom, and it's you're maybe a little bit self-conscious, and so you may have a little smile, even though clearly Greta is not smiling. Let's all of us work on that. We are a little bit like actors on stage. Let's pretend like it's actually happening, and put across exactly the feeling that was in the original. And try not to be a bunch of people on Zoom and, you know, where we can just cut ourselves a lot of slack. No, let's practice as if you're at that NATO exam and today is the big day, every time.
David, I have a quick question here for you, please.
Sure.
It sounds to me that both Miriam's and Maria's renditions had a tiny missed opportunity to convey that Greta passion, which is very strong. And you know, Greta plays a lot with the prosody of her delivery, and I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that. Now, granted, you've been cautioning us, don't overdo it, otherwise it's kind of like it becomes your show. We don't want that to happen. But how much is too much? How little is too little? That's the question.
My opinion, and what I was told, is try to undershoot just a little bit, like 80 or 90%. If somebody uses a vulgarity, or somebody is actually crying, or somebody is, of course you're not going to cry, but I mean if somebody is really very emotional, you're going to, you want to avoid over being more expressive than the original, by all means, because it looks comical. But you want to absolutely avoid sounding like a robot. So I say 80%, aim for 80%. So that, you know, again, going back to say a vulgar term or a lot of emotion, you'll try to put it across. And one of the reasons for that is in your attempt to, if you attempt an identical impact, you might accidentally go over. And that's not good. You see, you'll look funny. People might actually chuckle if you do too much of a theater. So it's, your question is, that's my best way to answer. You judge that. You can't be a robot, but you can't go so far that it starts to look a little bit comical. And you can feel that as you go, I think. As you watch other interpreters and as you go through your career, I think that's something you feel. But your comment is, again, that goes back to what I'm saying. Pretend like you're at the exam today, or you're on the stage today. And you do. Yes, it's true. Both Miriam and Marie were a little bit flat. So,
because Kaita is angry, and I didn't see that, you know, anger passion.
You know that, yeah. There's a thing. There's a thing between us and our speaker. Mm-hmm. You know, they're like at that moment they are our life. They are our lifelong buddy. And we're looking at Greta going, a lot of people didn't understand what you said, but they will now. You got to see her as your most faithful buddy. You've got to put yourself in her skin and say, I am going to do this, and they are going to hear what you just said. You got to have that feeling that I really am going to help you and make this work for you. And that's part of the feeling. And you know, when you get that attitude, you will more naturally put on the correct level of emotion, I think. So that's part of it. Let's continue, okay?